Well, hello. This is another episode of National Divorce Talk Raw with your host, Marc Ruiz Evans, where we will cover the awkward, uncomfortable, but actually true facts about how America's falling apart, states are looking legally and peacefully into secession, and why California in particular should at least consider the option that it may have to go it alone and that it could survive quite well independently. Well, let's get right into it. In this episode, we're going to be talking about how Californians cannot have the laws that they cherish to protect themselves. Now, my family's from Texas, and I've also lived in Colorado, and I've traveled to the South. And in many parts of America, people love guns. They love them. They love machine guns. They love guns. They think it's great, and they think it's part of their identity as an American. But that's not how things are here in California. Whether people like it or not, California has a very strict gun law regime. We do not like guns like the rest of America. We do not like machine guns, and we do not like shooting, and we do not identify guns as part of being an American. Right or wrong, good or bad, that's how things are here in California. What Californians are most concerned about is being able to protect themselves from being murdered or killed in the streets by machine guns and other forms of guns, and typically by Americans who have access to those guns and come into California. The Gilroy shooting here in California by a man with a machine gun was by an American who specifically came into California to kill Californians. That's what he said. That's what was documented. So Gilroy shooting, we have mass shooters come from America and come in here to try to kill us. There was also a man who flew from Missouri into California to light fires in order to kill Californians. So it's not undocumented that people in America have gotten weapons or have had the idea that we're so horrible and backwards that we need to be killed. Additionally, we don't like the gun laws that America has, and we want our own. Hence why we're more like a separate nation than not. And what I wanted to point out today, in today's episode of Californians, is you will not be able to have the laws that you want or the protections that you want to keep you or your children or your loved ones from being murdered in the streets. I know, sounds like hyperbole, but let's get right into it. I'll cover the mainstream sources, and we'll have the discussion that the mainstream news doesn't want to have. Let's go. Right here you go. So the first thing I want to point out is this article. Flurry of new laws move blue and red states apart. I know, I don't have the paywall. A wave of legislation, particularly in the West, is making states not only a little bit, but radically different. I'll show you that one more time. So what they're talking about is that the laws between red states and blue states used to be different, and now they're getting even further apart. And that's the New York Times this month going, wow, things were already bad and they're getting even worse. And the main driver is Western states, aka California, pursuing an even more extreme version of the laws to the left. So things were bad between red and blue with the laws. And now California is pushing them even more extreme to the left, and that's further dividing red and blue lines, making it even worse. That's what the New York Times felt was a good thing to talk about very recently, April 3rd, as you can see. Show you that one more time. April 3rd, there you go. Okay, here's the next thing. After the Sacramento shooting, the state may with the most gun laws may soon get more. This is April 5th, also on the same day as the New York Times article. But what I wanted to point out was they were showing that California has shootings and we want to have even more gun laws. And California already has the nation's strongest gun laws, but it's going to make even more laws, 24 more laws. And so after they talk about how California has strict gun laws and it's going to make even more laws, then they come down and admit, and I want to point this out. So here's the end of the article, okay? The last 2 points in the article, here's the end, on point 1, point 2, last 2 points, you have to read. You come to this article, hey, there's gun shootings, so we're going to have even more laws. Okay, we already have a lot, we're doing a lot, we're making it happen, we're going to do even more to go after this. And you got to read all this. And then buried at the bottom of the article is, but recognize that it really doesn't matter what gun laws you pass in California because people can skirt them because you're part of America. That's what this is saying. But in a country with hundreds of millions of firearms, even states with strict gun laws have a difficult time keeping illegal guns off the streets. States like California that have taken strong action on gun safety are to some extent at the mercy of states next door, says Freilich. He pointed to the example of Arizona, where today you can buy an unlimited quantity of assault weapons with 100-round magazines with no background checks. It's no incident or accident that Hawaii, roughly 2,500 miles away from the mainland, has the lowest rate of deaths by gun violence in the country, while California has the 7th lowest rate. So Hawaii does not have the harshest gun laws. California does. And yet Hawaii has the safest system for preventing gun violence, whereas we have the 7th safest. So you see what's happening? Hawaii is separated from America. It's hard to get guns out there. So it doesn't even have as gun laws as strict as we do. And yet it has the highest safety for gun violence. We have the 7th highest safety for gun violence, which means we're knocked down 7 places. And yet we have the most stringent gun laws in all of America by far. But it doesn't matter because we're tied to America, and American citizens can just come into California with their guns as they want. The other thing, as we've talked about routinely, is that the Supreme Court is now conservative. The Supreme Court sets the law. The federal courts have been striking down California gun laws after we passed, meaning you do not have the protections that you want to keep yourself from being murdered. And that is because the conservative court system put in place by Donald Trump, which cannot be undone. California's laws will face big court tests. By adopting the country's strongest gun measures, California takes on another task, defending the constitutionality of those laws in a country where gun rights and gun control are a seemingly never-ending battle. Defending the constitutionality of those laws in a country where gun rights and gun control are a seemingly never-ending battle. So right there in the article, NPR saying California can't have what it wants because it's part of America. They just said it here. California can't have what it wants because it's part of America, and there's other states who don't agree, and they'll just bring in whatever they want. And California can't have what it wants because it's part of America and part of the legal regime in America. Last June, for example, a federal judge held California's assault weapons ban unconstitutional. The state's measure banning high-capacity magazines has also faced challenges in a federal court. So that's 2 federal judges knocking down our gun control legislation. And here's the NPR article saying, well, as long as you're part of America and connected to American states and under the American legal regime, there's not really a whole lot you can do, no matter how many laws you pass. And look at Hawaii. They're basically independent from America, at least geographically, and they get to have gun safety, but you don't get to have that because you're part of America and you don't control your borders or your legal system. Just to make that a little bit more clear. So this came out April 6th. Chief Justice Roberts joins with liberals to criticize shadow docket as court reinstates Trump-era rule. So a 5-4 Supreme Court reinstated a Trump-era rule Wednesday that restricts the authority of states to reject federal permits under the Clean Water Act, in another ruling putting the court's emergency docket in the spotlight. Chief Justice Roberts joined the liberal justices in dissent, arguing the court's majority had gone astray by granting an unwarranted request on its emergency docket. What this is saying is that the Supreme Court is now so conservative that the conservative, this guy, is going, wow, you guys are way too conservative. So Justice Roberts is going, hey, I'm a conservative, but now the court is so conservative, it even shocks me, a conservative. That's how conservative the Supreme Court is now. Hence why all your gun laws are going to be struck down. And another example that the Supreme Court will strike down laws that are key to California is that they removed the Clean Water Act. Who's the biggest fighter for clean environmental regulation in America? California. Who sued the federal government more during the Trump era for environmental regulations? California. So the Supreme Court says we reject California's ability to do its own Clean Water Act laws, and we're going to reinstate a Trump-era rule. So Trump's gone, but the Supreme Court is here. And they're so conservative They scare conservative justices, and they reinstate Trump-era laws, which directly affect California's ability to uphold our values to us. And this is the court that will see if our gun laws are safe or not. If you're not believing me, here's 538, October 20th, 2021. That's last year, but 538. The Supreme Court's conservative revolution is already happening. The conservative justices fight over how fast and how far to move the court to the right. So these are political experts saying how the conservative court is really, really conservative, more than we've ever seen. And they're trying to undo a lot of liberalism and move American legal infrastructure to being as conservative as soon as possible. Here's another one, Voice of America. Conservative supermajority on the U.S. Supreme Court asserts itself. This came out July 4th, 2021, last year, talking about the same thing. Here's another article from the Pew Research Center saying, surprisingly, the public doesn't trust the Supreme Court anymore. So because the Supreme Court has gone so conservative, the public doesn't trust it. 84% say justices should not bring their political views into the decision. So a lot of the public is unhappy with the Supreme Court being super conservative. Here's the thing. They can do absolutely nothing about it. You're appointed to that court for life, and nobody's really ever removed from the court. And you might be able to stack the court, but that idea has never been done. And when it was proposed under FDR, it was struck down as unconstitutional. So there's a lot of liberals saying, well, we'll just add more justices to the Supreme Court and expand the number of people on the Supreme Court bench. That's never been done before in all of American history. And the last guy who proposed it, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, in the 1930s. So last time it was seriously proposed was a century ago. Nobody thought it was a reasonable idea to bring it up in the last 100 years. And the last guy to do it was told that's unconstitutional. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg, before she died, also said that was a bad idea. Yes, she did say that. And here's faith in the Supreme Court. So it was about 69% favorable. It's declined to 54% favorability. And the unfavorability margin rose from 30% to 44%. So you have a 16% drop in the amount of Americans from August 19th to January. So 2019 August to January 2022, about the last 3 years, 16% drop in support for the Supreme Court and a 14% increase in distrust for the court. So people don't like the Supreme Court and they don't trust it. And that's happened in the last 3 years, which is roughly when all these articles are pointing out, wow, this is a super conservative Supreme Court. The last 3 years, here's the result of that. People don't trust this court. You know these percentages are going to be even worse in California. But let's take it a step further. So Joe Matthews is a columnist who covers California a lot. Very well informed about California politics. May 20th, 2021. He says the Supreme Court has a direct bias against California, that they outright hate us and they try to take laws to attack us. He even goes further with this one, California versus the Supreme Court. The time has come to challenge this dishonorable court's bias against our state. He wrote 2 different articles in May last year saying the Supreme Court hates California and will try to take down all of our laws. And it gets so strong, this was his final quote. As for the current justices, here's a warning. Respect the law is foundational, but respect for judges is conditional. If you persist in open bias against our state, don't be surprised if citizens defy your rulings. If you persist in open bias against our state, don't be surprised if citizens defy your rulings. So the Supreme Court is more conservative than it's been since the late 1970s. Nothing can be done to undo that except for stacking the court, which hasn't been even suggested in a century, was rejected by Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and was seen as unconstitutional when FDR did it. At the same time, the divide between red and blue states is getting even more extreme because California is pushing even more extreme liberal laws. California can't have the gun rights that it wants because it's connected to America, where gun-loving states like Nevada and Arizona can bring their guns in, and a conservative Supreme Court can strike down our gun laws as they've already done. The conservative Supreme Court is now so conservative that it's scaring even conservatives on the bench. And many experts have said this is the most conservative Supreme Court we've ever seen. Additionally, California reporters who cover California politics are talking about defying the Supreme Court and ignoring their rules, which is something that we last saw people talk about in 1861, right before the Civil War. So California, as long as you're part of America, you cannot have the gun laws that you want. They will be struck down. There's nothing you can do about it. And even more of your laws are going to be struck down. And people in California who, with good reputations, are already saying, perhaps it's time to ignore the Supreme Court. Well, that basically means you're setting up your own legal regime. And that basically means secession. See how it's all coming back together? This has been another episode of National Divorce Talk Raw with your host, Marc Ruiz Evans. I hope you found it educational, and we'll be back with more facts that are awkward, discomforting, and that most of the mainstream media doesn't really want you to pay attention to. Thank you. See you again.